All right. Welcome, everyone, to another live stream of Enochian books. We will move on to other books since we are gearing up for EnochiaCon. We're doing Enochian books because it's also one of my main forms of practice. So you might, if you haven't seen these three massive books before, you might be a little surprised. These three books, published as a hardcover in 2 volumes, are the greatest magisterial work of Enochian publishing, period. Why do I not then recommend them as the first thing people should buy? Many people do recommend you get these before any others. However, there's no debate that Joseph Peterson's version of the 5 books of mystery, now republished and massively updated as Mysteriorum Libri Quinque, is the essential place to start. It just is. And I showed you that book yesterday or the day before. I can't remember. They're all blending together. But and that's where you should start. Then you might want to go to this. The problem with going straight to this is these, as amazing as they are, and they recreate the pages as best as possible to match, even showing you where that indicates where there was a tear or a page of the manuscript missing. And Kevin Klein, whether that's a real person or not, or a pseudonym for someone who we have theories who it might be, someone who has passed. But the person, Kevin Klein, we'll call them Kevin Klein, of course, went through tremendous effort to demonstrate where there was parts of the manuscript missing and to show even the little notes made by John Dee written in handwriting. And that's absolutely remarkable. This is truly a phenomenal work. The reason that this book is not as useful as it could be is because it doesn't translate the Latin passages. That could have been done in footnotes, but it would have just made it massive or the text smaller. So you still really want Stephen Skinner's text. And also, there are mistakes, of course, in this. There's mistakes in every book, especially manuscript transcription books. You're going to find little things here and there. Skinner says he's found errors in this, and people have said they found a few errors in his, of course. That's just how it is. It's such is life. We're not perfect. But that said, look at what this book is. It is amazing. And kudos to Llewellyn for putting it out. Llewellyn keeps putting out a lot of great stuff. A lot of people like to joke about Llewellyn, but what are you talking about? They're putting out all the best stuff. And the size of the pages is fabulous. Like, you can really get into the work of John Dee and Kelly through this text. This is something that was just a gift, and it only came out a little while ago. I think I saw a copy in 2019, the leather 2-volume edition at my buddy John's house in Rochester, England. He had it, and beautiful edition. And you really get a sense, like, the spelling is not modernized very much. And so he went behind the chair and so vanished away. Hic est angelus ecclesiae mea qui dotiet ille via meum. There stepped out a plain man, and under his garment a girdle, and under his girdle a rod, and in his hand he had a sword, and in his mouth a flame of fire. He had a great H upon his sword, and under it 22. He went behind the chair, etc. It's so fun. And this is why, you see how much fun we're having already. This is why people like Enochian purists like myself and others do like to say, start with the diaries. So whether it's the Peterson 5 books of mystery or the 5 books of mystery in here without the Latin translated, because Peterson translates the Latin, Dr. Skinner translates the Latin. And so you start with the diaries because then you really get a sense of the actual spirits themselves and how Dee and Kelly got their way into these practices. You really can get a sense of the history and the human aspect of the creation of these diaries, the recording of them, and these great prayers, all done so beautifully here. So here's a prayer I say a lot, for example, but I say an English translation of it made by Joseph Peterson. However, I have said the Latin, and I would love to memorize the Latin. My Latin's generally good enough to grasp a good bit. And you'll find if you do memorize some Latin prayers and study a bit of Latin, you start to pick stuff up at least to a low level pretty quickly. And you can just go use a grammar text to learn Latin. Look at the charts, look at the indexing of this book. And it's 3 volumes. This, I don't have 3 copies. These are 3 volumes. Now, probably most of you watching are Enochian practitioners, but maybe not. You can let me know in the comments there. The new masterful edition of this, just so beautifully bound by Llewellyn as well. Amazing work. We could spend forever. Like, I could just sit here for the next 6 hours reading parts of this book and enjoying it with you all. It's very useful for reference, but you should absolutely read through it. Yeah, there's lots you'll get out of it. I'm just reading through it to get a sense of the evolution of the relationships. But do what you want. It's to each their own. There's lots of ways to approach this work, and you should approach it in a way that fills your life with the most joy. That is what the spirits would want. To quote King Karmara when he first appears to John Dee, I think we can find that passage. What does he first say when King Karmara of the Heptarchia Mystica appears? He says, "Banish wrath." That is his initial greeting and exhortation. You got the tiny Hebrew here. See, it's so beautifully laid out and demonstrated the way the Hebrew is done. So you can really, the painstaking work that they went through to put this text together, it's flabbergasting. It's flabbergasting. Not because you couldn't do it, just because, yeah, we all know how much effort this would take. Look at those. Aren't they gorgeous? Obviously, I just got this a couple of years ago. I haven't had even a close chance to read through it straight through, but I've read through the Skinner and the Peterson ones, so I have a sense of what that's like to just read through it. But again, I've been at this 30 years, so you get tired of doing old approaches, and then you want to challenge yourself to new approaches, and then you discover things. That's how I've made some discoveries that actually were significant contributions, and I've lectured about them in my Arcane Research Society presentation at Enochian last year. I presented original breakthrough finding that is a big deal, and I'm working on getting it published in an academic journal now, so we'll see how that goes. Look at all of this beautiful stuff. Look at this beautiful stuff. Yeah, blank. And I was about to say, not a wasted page, but in fact, there's a missing, he's included even the pages for where there's missing folios. So you get a sense of how much is missing. When people say, oh, it's all the material's missing, you can see exactly how much is missing. And you can see where the assumptions are made as to what was, because the author here, the editor, is assuming these things. The things that are torn off, you don't know for sure, but you can figure it out by context and being very familiar with the work. Let's look at some of the other ones as well. And the nice thing about the soft covers, of course, is you're not buying them just to resell them at 10 times the value. You're buying them to use them. So I would say make notes in yours. Like, I would highlight the things you'd want to highlight. That's what I want to do, is when I do the read through of all of these things straight, referencing the Latin translations and Skinner, of course, for the most part. What I want to do is I'm just going to go through this with a highlighter and highlight everything and make tons of notes, especially on the blank pages that are kindly left, and see what new approaches and understanding I can find through entering deeper into the mysteries, as they say. Because remember, entering into the mysteries is about entering into your own heart. It's entering into love of God. That is what this work is about. And then conjuring spirits to help improve the world, improve your life, transform yourself. We'll find a fun passage, a fun story to read, because there's some wild stuff in here, especially the passages that are clearly written for the papal nuncio when he was inspecting their work and they wanted to throw him off, right? So they wrote some fake entries about some fake things that didn't really happen, and that later on in the diaries. So if you just reference the diaries, here's to your point, Dona dogmastos. So if you use them just as a reference, you're going to end up thinking some things are meant seriously that aren't, because you'll read one section, then read later on in the diary, you'll be like, oh, they faked that just to throw off the Pope or the papal nuncio, because they were embroiled in politics between Queen Elizabeth and the Holy Roman Emperor. D wasn't the original 007 we now know, but you could argue that he was. That's where the nickname came along, from Ian Fleming's friend who suggested that, as we now know. Let's find a fun passage to read. Again, you can see how long I've already spent just looking at this, because once you pick it up, it's hard to put it down. It's very hard. I have some favorite sections in their lives, but we'll just do a flip through. Okay, here, this is wild. Let's do this. D. After we had been at dinner, we read over the premises and considered them quietly. Edward Kelly, here he is. D. So the spirits showed up, and Kelly's like, oh, it's here. D. Blessed be he that cometh in the name of the highest, to whom all honor and glory. Amen. Uriel, the angel Uriel. We love Uriel, don't we? The angel of God's light. And also the sort of the higher form of Karmara. If Karmara is an angel, then Uriel is the superior archangel. And Karmara is often seen as an emanation or an aspect of Uriel. Lo, I say, which of you hath an eye that seeth not now the world, the vanity and folly of worldlings, and such as are choked with the mildew of vanity and worldly promotion. Yes, they were seeking that. For thus saith the Lord, wherein could I show myself more, either unto this age or unto this emperor, than with rebuking him for his sins from heaven? Who is able to promise more to perform assurater than I, which lighten and make all things? Yet they believe not. Yea, they rejoice in their own folly, and despise me. Yea, because they despise me, whom I have sent with my sword unto them. Edward Kelly, just a line. Yeah. Thus saith the Lord, they have despised their own garlands, and have trodden their foe under feet. They have rent their robes in pieces, and have cast them into the waters. They are become masterless dogs, for I have forsaken them. And lo, Rudolph, the Holy Roman Emperor Rudolph, I will scatter thy bones, and thy head shall be divided in many pieces. I will bring in thy enemies all over thy kingdoms, and for thy sake shall many thousands perish. He also that thinketh himself wise, if he die natural death, then say I am not, neither that I live with my people. And it goes on. Clearly I'm losing my voice, so I have to be careful. Yeah, it's exciting. I could spend all day. I could do this all day. This is about the Lasky stuff. That's a fun subplot. Yeah, okay. Quickly, we will take a look at the instructions that Kevin Klein includes, because there's some really great instructions. This is the parts of the Earth section is extensive and well fully laid out. Here's all the calls. These are too big for my desk. The keys or Enochian calls here. The clavis angelicae. Parts of the earth. Whereby we influence politics and nations. It's a good time to do some magic to maybe bring some peace or safety or help to people. Oratio ad Deum singulus diebus tribus vicibus te dicenda. O Almighty, eternal, the true and living God, O King of glory, Lord of hosts, O thou, the creator of heaven and earth. I've said this prayer many times. We say this 3 times in a row, and by the end, you really are in a different state of mind. And here's the conjuration themselves for the king. O puissant and noble king, and then you insert the name of the king, the angel that you're summoning, the king of the day. So Each of the days has a different king, and each has a prince under it. The kings correspond to the planets of the day. The princes do not. They correspond to different planets, which is something that the Golden Dawn changed often. I think at least a lot of people I know. The manuscript that Mathers wrote on working with what he called the 7 days of creation with the Heptarchia is lost or unknown to our knowledge, mostly burned by temples that closed down. So we don't have that, but we have some good ideas about how they might have approached it, often changing planetary correspondences to align more clearly either with the sun or with themselves in harmony, since the Golden Dawn's all about balance. So the supplications, the book of supplications and invocations, this is a very important text, and I talked a lot about it yesterday on the live stream. So here you have the names, and this is the famous image that Aaron Leach noticed in his book was incorrect. So Dee had made a note that these two should be swapped, and but then didn't update the diagram. So that's where modern books are vital, because just because you have the diaries doesn't mean you understand how to. Imagine Aaron hadn't made that observation and put that in his book, then no one would be able to realize that Dee had meant to swap the Oipe with Mpe divine names here. And yeah, and the Golden Dawn uses completely different arrangement, of course, again. Yeah. The fundamental supplication. And this is for the self-initiation into the Watchtower. And these are Dee's prayers that he was told. So you're meant to write your own. We went over this yesterday, so I won't belabor that today. And look at all these charts. Lots of charts with Enochian letters, English letters representing Enochian ones. And more charts, maps. Yeah, it takes you through Dee's journey, and it gives you index of the country names and what they are today. And then a dictionary of words and how to pronounce the words. So this was also, it's a good accompaniment to Aaron Leach's masterful 2-volume study of the angelical language. And we didn't really have much else to compare that with, but now that we have this sort of, you can compare the two and see where there's some room for debate and see where each author has made their different insights. And then in the very back, there's instructions and there's actual notes about how they practiced and the order in which they practice things. Not in the very back of the book. I don't recall where. It's somewhere there. Anyway, we don't have time to stay on this all day, but there you go. The epic 3-volume. Oh, if you don't have a kettlebell, you could just press these up, bench press these all day, build some muscles that way. So next we are going to move on to one of the most radical books in the Enochian corpus of modern books. We're going to move on to Athena Wallander's advanced grimoire of Enochian magic, black and white, and it actually is what it says it to be. It is an advanced grimoire. There's no debate about that. It even goes into the Caco demons and how to work with them. No one else has really published on that, which is probably good. But before we get into that, I'm going to give a little promotion to my conference. I hope you consider attending and supporting our work at the Arcane Research Society by attending Enochiacon this year. And you get access to a massive course by Dr. Chato for the academic study of Western esotericism. That is a true blessing and a gift, because you get it free by attending the conference this year with us, and you should do that. Absolutely. And I'll be right back. See you soon.
Canada's only occult conference returns this July 11th to 13th. Enochiacon is an opportunity to come together with leading scholars of esotericism and practitioners of Western occultism in a friendly and open environment in Vancouver, Canada. This year in 2025, with presentations by an amazing group of presenters, including Dr. Justin Sledge, Dr. Terry Burns, Father Aaron Leach, Dr. Sasha Chato, Frater Eleftheria of Lifting the Lamp, Dr. David Litwa, Chris Trenholm, Daniel Rekshan, David Rankine, Ike Baker, and P.D. Newman. You can also attend live online and experience premier presentations of cutting-edge research and discoveries, and experience beautiful British Columbia. Register to become a member and you also get included 2 upcoming winter workshops and access to Dr. Sasha Chado's phenomenal year-long undergraduate level course to introduce you to the academic study of Western esotericism. This is not even available at universities at the undergraduate level, but will be included now for everyone who registers to EnochiaCon 2025 before July. Tarry not and sign up today. Go to EnochiaCon.com or ArcaneResearchSociety.com for more information.
Welcome back. All right. The color version is even more expensive, like hundreds of dollars. But fair enough. It's her complete understanding of working with the system for decades, which she has done. For a long time, it was, of course, illegal to do this work. So now we can do it. So she has even information on the kings, which is great because I work a lot with these kings and these princes. And I would have liked maybe a bit more of her notes on her experience with them, but you can't have everything. She makes her own tools and does the metal work herself, which is very cool. She sent Lon his gold ring. And I covered her newer book yesterday, which is just a little guidebook on how to make the tools, which is now available for a very reasonable price on Amazon. It wasn't when I bought it, but I think she's realized that it's better to make it reasonable so more people get it. And she has her theories on which tools should be made of what materials. There's a big debate about using, some people think you don't need to use beeswax and that you can just make it out of granite. Some people are fine with that. I personally am, that's not my style. I think there's an important thing to be said about animal byproducts working. When magic recommends working with an animal product, usually I think there's a good reason for it. I think it ties it to the earth in an important way. So she has a color version of this with all the pictures in color from Lulu. This is a Lulu published book where you can get it directly from Lulu. You can also get it on Amazon, I think. Depends on what they're up to there. So she includes how to work with the Caco demons, which is controversial because that's a 2-lettered set of spirit names created by reversing the direction of the letters, and those are the spirits in charge of things like cancers and different illnesses and diseases. Just got some advice on scrying, some advice on water scrying. That's my favorite thing to do, is water scrying. Generally I use a copper bowl that I made in the early 90s and I still use it today. So she talks about smoke scrying. Maybe I'll read you the section on the Caco demons. Maybe. Let's see. Talks about the aethers. And then she has some instructions in very hard to read cursive print, but that's okay. Instructions on doing some different spells and how to make a particular call into a talisman. So yeah, she has a lot of that stuff. She calls the angels EEs, Enochian entities, because again, as a non-Christian practitioner, I suppose that's what a lot of people like to do, and that's okay. It doesn't bother me. Call them whatever you want. Daimones, spirits, it is all the same thing. And if you think that you can understand the nuances of these spirits and what kind of entities they are, and especially in distinction from each other, we're guessing at best. We might get told things by spirits and they might say this or that, but how do you really know? Plus, how do you know that they can explain what they are properly in fullness to our human minds? They don't understand what it is to be human. They make it very clear in Dee's diaries. They have no understanding of how humans relate to God. They just don't get it. And they say that explicitly. Okay, we can't help you write your prayers because we don't understand how God talks to you. Like, we're different kinds of beings. And that goes back to Hermetism and the Hermetica texts, where we're like star gods and we're like daimons because we have a holy daimon access through our nous, which is a daimon. However, we're considered twice gods. We're not just like the star gods. We're better in a sense because we're also dying gods in our human bodies. These human bodies are a form of godhood. Spirits can't interact with the physical universe in the way that we can in our physical bodies. And of course, we die, we're mortal. And so we lose these physical bodies, and that makes them holy and special in a whole new way. So Hermetic thought, when you actually go to the source and move on from the Kabbalion, is really fascinating and resonates very true with me since I was 13, 14 years old and first started reading the Divine Pymander, Practical Enochian Magic. There you go. You have the parts of the earth. Again, based on the version of the tables that you use, because those will change slightly based on that. And I didn't find the cacodemons. Where are they? Is there an index? Maybe there's an index. Cacodemons. Because that's what you want, what you really want. The Aethers, where were the cacodemons? They were there. Yeah, I knew they were there somewhere in the middle. The Enochian cacodemons. What does she say about them? The lowest, meaning the most base of the Enochian hierarchies, are the cacodemons. And cacodemons is bad spirits. Are considered the blind elemental forces and are also considered evil. It is recommended not to work with these entities. However, the Enochian entities still did make sure to give Dee the instructions on how to derive their names from the Great Table. This was for completeness, I believe. You can't have one without the other, and the EEs, the Enochian entities, have never been known to water something down or leave something for the sake of appeal. I have performed some cacodemon workings, which I will go into later in the book, and you'll have to get the book to read those. Each of the cacodemon names consists of 3 letters. The first 2 letters from the Angels of Light, names prefaced by the nearest letter from the Black Cross. We will again use the eastern portion of the Great Table to derive the names. In the first example, we see that the X in XARP is on the same row as the CZ. So X prefaces the CZ, and A from XARP is on the same row as TO. So therefore, the letter A prefaces TO. There you go. And so she goes, and we're not going to say the cacodemon names or pronounce them at all. We're not even going to spend much thought on them. But there you go. It is an interesting book. And yeah, probably the darkest of Enochian books. That's not fair to say, because there's some people who do wacky stuff with Enochian and try to like really make it diabolical and pretend it's not a distinct, explicitly form of Christian angel magic. It is one of the most Christian magical systems that exists. Can you replace the word Jesus with God or Jesus with Maad, the Enochian word for God? For sure. Of course you can. It still works. The spirits are very eager to work with magicians. A lot of them are. Not all of them, but especially the Heptarchy kings. They're considered to be known to be very friendly and germane to the work of the magicians. So we've been building up for a long time to talk about practical angel magic of Dr. John Dee's Enochian Tables. This is Stephen Skinner and David Rankine's first volume of their series in the Grimoire series. Originally, there was 9,000 words of these prayers that Dee wrote, and there was a manuscript of them. But then someone along the way came along. There's a nice quote from Aaron Leach, convincingly says of the Rosicrucians. Nice quote from Aaron Leach, who will be at the conference. Yes. Someone came along and took 9,000 words of Dee's writing and expanded it to almost 90,000 words. We don't know who did it. To this very day, all these prayers, we have no idea who wrote them. Skinner and Rankine have a theory. The theory, since they wrote it in, what year did this first come out? 05 or 06? I think it was 05. Because I first saw the book in Atlantis book in London when I was there with my buddy John on a business trip for the board game company we worked for. And I wanted it. So he ordered it for my birthday back when we were in Vancouver. And thank you, John. Love you, man. This is not that same version, but that's okay. That's okay. So all these prayers are absolutely incredible. And There's even, I think, some Caco demon prayers. I haven't worked with these prayers, but there's good reasons for that. Not that you shouldn't work with them. It's just a lot of the prayers we use in Enochian magic in the purest traditional sense are ones that you're meant to write them yourselves a lot of the time. That doesn't mean these aren't fascinating. But who expanded 9,000 words to 90,000 words? It's a very curious situation. I love the introductions of Skinner's books. I love his introductions. Some people like to be extra critical of them, but they're just wankers. There's a lot. Sometimes I doodle in the books. Make them my own. Frederick. So they have a theory on who expanded these texts. And there's an example of the original manuscript. The text contains the actual invocations of the kings, seniors, angels, including evil angels, and spirits of the table shown in the beginning of Sloan Manuscript 307. None of this material has ever been published in full before. Sloan Manuscript 307 probably was written between 1605 and 1608, while Sloan MS 3821 is a copy made from it in the second half of that century. Both are obviously a translation and a tenfold expansion of the Latin of the D manuscript, which is the last item in Sloan Manuscript 3191. So these manuscripts were both written with considerable care, indicating their value to the scribe. One of the most important features of these very beautifully written manuscripts is that they supply the correct invocations to use in conjunction with the Enochian tablets, something that has hitherto been missing from the material published on John Dee's Magic, the Golden Dawn, or Enochian Magic. And then he talks about Peterson's excellent publication of the Spiritual Diaries in Liber Mysteriorum, which has now got a new edition, even better. So, yeah, you can use these prayers. Yeah, for sure. You can also write your own. And you should do that in dialogue with the spirits, getting advice from them. Ragios, Ragiosel, Ragiosel. Very cool. So yeah, that's what this book mostly is, all of these different prayers to the spirits. It's just absolutely incredible. And then at the very back of the book, what we have. So this is a mystery someone could still discover. Someone could still figure out who wrote all these. And there's theories. You can go check it out on the D Studies forum on Facebook, the Facebook group where all the experts are. You can find all of us there. And at the end, we have the Enoch prayer. And then at the very end, we have, hilariously, and this is also very fun as well, we have the actual Golden Dawn manuscript. Now, some people say this is all the Enochian that the Golden Dawn have used. That's not true, because they had access to Casaubon and the other manuscripts in the library, and we can see that from the manuscripts that they used in the Golden Dawn. But this was the main material that they drew from in the Golden Dawn. This was the bulk of it, and it's just so thin. So I actually have the transcribed, over here is the Ritual X. So I have enough Enochian books to do one more part. And the other, we'll do one more part to these. We'll do a part 4, and I'll go over that text, that manuscript introduced by Fuller from Hellfire Publishing, which will take us into some of the correct pronunciation territory that has often been misconstrued and really bastardized by over reliance on Regardie as the authority on how Enochian was pronounced in the Golden Dawn. Regardie wasn't around to really understand their method and how nuanced it was, and so he characterized it in a simplistic way that doesn't actually represent Golden Dawn Enochian pronunciation. The best place to find Golden Dawn Enochian pronunciation is the back of Crowley's publication of Mather's Goetia of the Lesser Key of Solomon, and then you see some original Enochian stuff that Crowley wrote using the pronunciation method he learned in the Golden Dawn, and it's nothing like the clunky version represented or misrepresented in Regardie, especially when you see the Call of the Portal. That's not how they said it, the way that Regardie transcribed it. Might be how some of them said it, but it's clunky and not accurate. So here's an example of the Tabularum Enochi of the Golden Dawn. You can see it's designed for Adeptus for 5 = 6. And then it's just it's a limited amount of information. It's not a lot. There's also some other peculiarities to this manuscript, and I'll save that for those of you who know. But the scribe of one of them at one point started just inserting all the same offices for the spirits. Like, he got tired of of differentiating them and writing what the spirits' actual offices were. So he just started saying they all do the same thing. And so you have to go through that and figure out, and you have to do some work or read someone who's done the work to discern what the actual offices of the spirits are, because they're not all the same, obviously. But that's something that confused a lot of people, and I remember debating that in the 90s with my friends and with my teachers. Tablet of Union. Oh, most significantly, I can't believe I almost forgot this. So this is the text that shows where the Golden Dawn got the division of the tables. The Great Tablet, the big Enochian tablet, in the Golden Dawn is famously divided into 4, put at each direction. In the Golden Dawn, they treat them elementally, but in the original Enochian system, they're treated more directionally and alchemically, using the alchemical colors of white, green, red, and black. Golden Dawn then used these psychedelic flashing colors for the elements. But this is the manuscript where we find the tablets separated. So everyone who says that it was Mathers and the genius of Mathers, and he was quite a genius magically, he did create almost the entire system almost on his own. It seems to be the case from very recent up-to-date scholarship. It's we're learning a lot these days, my friends. But this shows you that it wasn't the Golden Dawn that separated the tablets. They were already separated in this manuscript. So this is where the Golden Dawn got their form of the tablets, because it was Sloan Manuscript 307 wasn't written by MacGregor Mathers. This manuscript would have had to have been written by Mathers for him to have been the one to separate the tablets. So there you go, in case anyone misinforms you again. And the Golden Dawn also, in the Outer Order, they did emulate the white, red, and black colors. So in the Outer Order of the Golden Dawn, all the colors are white, red, and black for everything. There's no flashing colors. There's no bright colors. Only 3 diagrams, I believe, in the initiations in the Outer Order are actually meant to be in color, and there's a reason for that. So the Outer Order of the Golden Dawn is all black and white. It's all black and white with a little red. That on the altar, that in the tetrahedrons atop the 2 pillars of Hermes and Solomon, you see it everywhere. So yeah, this is just super fun. And I think this text is what really reinvigorated Enochian research when it came out almost 20 years ago now. So we're going to be studying all of that at the EnochiaCon. We have presentations by Dr. Burns, who's one of the foremost scholars, and Aaron Leach will be there, and he's great. We were chatting today, and he's very excited. And Dr. Sledge, who wrote his master's thesis on the semiotics of Enochian. You can read that. You can download it from one of his videos on his site or from his website. So it's going to be fun. And if you sign up, you get access to a full year-long university-level undergraduate course in the academic study of Western esotericism. And I'm going to play you a little 1-minute video for Dr. Caco to tell you about that. And sign up for EnochiaCon today, and you'll get access to that course for free rather than having to pay the full freight after July, which is still less than half what you'd pay at a university. So it's an amazing deal. I can't oversell it enough. It's going to change the face of a culture and give us all a massive step forward in our understanding of the material. So I hope you consider signing on and enjoy, and we'll be back for a couple more Enochian books after these messages.
The Arcane Research Society proudly presents Dr. Sasha Caco's Introduction to Western Esotericism, a fully online course with over 45 hours of recorded lectures. Study at your own pace with a course guide, reading lists, and immersive activity packs. Designed for practitioners and for scholars, it's engaging yet challenging, with expert support from Dr. Caco. Watch 2,000 years of esoteric history unfold, from the mystic currents of Hermetism, Neoplatonism, and Gnosticism to the alchemical fires of the Renaissance and the evolving traditions of modern occulture. Uncover hidden truths, debunk myths, and trace esoteric thought through time. With over 20 years in education, a champion of scholar-practitioner dialogue, Dr. Caco has taught this course since 2010 to hundreds of satisfied students. Get this course free with a ticket to EnochiaCon 2025. After that, it's $1,500 Canadian dollars for Arcane Research Society members or $2,000 Canadian dollars for non-members with lifetime access.
here we are, The Enochian Magic of Dr. John Dee by Jeffrey James. One of my favorite books. I'm very critical of James and this book, but that doesn't mean I don't love it, because the way he gets you into the system, and this, my friend loaned me her copy because mine was stolen in my library. And there's a new edition, and you can get the new edition of it called The Enochian Evocation of John Dee, and that's the new version of it. There was a copyright dispute with the publisher between Llewellyn and the new edition from Weiser, I believe. And I did a whole critique of the two prefaces. There's a preface for each one, and I did an in-depth dive of Mr. James and his approach, and looking at some of the contradictions that he says, and I'll release that one day. But for now, let's just look at this book, because it was one of the coolest, and it came out a long time ago, which is why I got it, this version. This is the version I had. Got it in 94, and this came out in 93, 94, right when it came out. It was on sale at the bookstore, the local occult bookstore, and I grabbed it, and I saw how Christian it was, so that turned me off. That turned me right off. But over the years, I read through how he gets your feet warm by slowly giving you this narrative and this background of what the context of this magic is. And so he does situate it correctly in its Judeo-Christian roots and in the Enochian world, you could say. That's not to everyone's taste. It certainly wasn't to my taste when I was young. However, as I've gotten older, I enjoy that sort of thing a lot more, especially when an author takes the time to try and immerse you in the world before just giving you a series of purifications and steps and tools that need to be made. And I love how, he wanted you to understand the story. He really wanted you to get a sense of these spirits and how they came to be. And so he collected their main sayings, the main information each of them said, whether it was the Archangel Michael to Dee, King Karmara, Oriel, King Karmara again. So you can just get a sense of the main things, bits of information the spirits shared that allowed this system to be practiced. And in the very back, he has his method of practice. Yeah. So that's something I really liked, this was before the days of having the good editions and diaries from Peterson, Skinner, and Klein. In these days, all we had was this, and then the Casaubon book, and it was very hard to get the Casaubon book, which I showed in a previous review. Beautiful book, sells for almost $1,000 usually these days, but even back then it was still $80 to $100 if you could find a copy. We didn't have much in the way of high quality diaries. We didn't have the Latin translated for any of them, so you had to have Latin to be able to read the diaries. But here he also goes through not only the heptarchia and the symbols that you use for working with each of the kings and princes in the planetary system, which is the first step in Enochian magic. And I do have a course on that down in the description. You can link to it, enochiangrimoire.com, if you want to check out my introductory course to get you actually practicing the Heptarchia Mystica and take your first steps towards your first operation. It's gotten some great reviews from some somewhat famous people, actually. You'd be surprised who practices magic. I won't say specifically. It was someone who founded The Verge, if you know what that is. So I might edit this out of the public version of the video, but we'll say it quietly for now. So fascinating the people who are drawn to this kind of magic and the complexity that the spirits were able to communicate through the brilliant mind of Dee and the very psychically awake mind of Kelly, whether they were using entheogens or not, cheating or not, to communicate with the spirits. Here we have at the end the self-initiation aspect again, and this is using the Latin translations from Upton in the Robert Turner. He got permission to use those translations from the Latin, because again, before this we only had the Latin, but Upton translated the Latin in Elizabethan Magic by Robert Turner, and I covered that book yesterday. So these are Dee's prayers for self-initiation into the Enochian system. It's a mistake to use them. The spirits were very clear about that. You must write your own under every circumstance. You cannot use these prayers. Even Dee was chastised for doing these incorrectly, and I talked about that a lot yesterday on that video, which just premiered before this one, so you can go check it out if you haven't already. Lots of Enochian content to enjoy. But yes, it's beautifully laid out. The text is nice. All of that's very nice. And so it's a very accessible book, and it's a fun one to have. The new version is basically the same with just a new preface. There's nothing substantially changed in the text. And then he goes over how to work with them. You do the prayers, you do the oration to God, the prayer of Enoch, which technically is not correct. You don't need the prayer of Enoch. That's for the self-initiation, and not necessary for the heptarchial works, heptarchical conjurations. But you can still use it anyway. And here we go, the spirit names, the different forms, the kings and princes are all listed here. The angels of the airs, he goes over them. And again, you'll always know to double check for typos against the diaries and other manuscripts, because there are innocent mistakes that happen with single words, especially even the Enochian dictionary in here has got some errors. But you're always going to find that, and a serious practitioner is always going to compare things against each other and do their best to make sure that you are understanding what you're doing. You're not just doing it willy-nilly. I don't think we have time for that one today, but because I wanted to go over another biography, spiritual biography. This is Jason Loub's, and I've been looking forward to talk about Jason Loub's book for a long time. I talked to him about it, of course, when he was on my podcast recently. Lovely, lovely printed book produced with beautiful full color images. This is the famous, highly, if you know about Da Vinci and this debate around this Da Vinci Salvator Mundi, it was essentially repainted. So a lot of people debate if it was Da Vinci at all. And even the original painting underneath this painting may not have been Da Vinci, but there's a documentary on it that's fascinating and wild. The Lament of the Golden Dawn. See, it's not the Lament of the Golden Dawn. Come on, Jason, you know better than that. It's not. This is not a Golden Dawn symbol. It should not be shown, and we never show it. Yeah. But it is the Lament of the Inner Order. So I understand why people say that. I'm just being pedantic because it's fun. I believe these are meant to be reversed as well. Yeah, I think so. Huh. Okay. Lots of cool color images. Beautiful stuff. So Jason did a fabulous job with his publisher here, really bringing this stuff to life. And what he does in this semi-biography really is to look at Western magic as an outflowing of Protestant Christianity and Protestant culture, and a pushback against Roman Catholic. We debated that on the podcast, so I won't go into it here. Here's the Golden Dawn tablets with all their fabulous colors and the truncated pyramid. So these are all little pyramids that stick up off the tablet. They're a pain in the ass to make. And of course, these are just painted on flat onto the base of the Argentium Astrum altar in the Crowley's order. And there's a beautiful picture of Dee's original Sigillum Deamet in the gold thing. It's amazing how much of the stuff we have left in his most likely candidate for the scrying crystal manifested by Uriel. It just appeared in the room. And the classic painting, classic portrait. So Louv's got some. I loved reading this. I really did. I read it when I was evacuated from a fire in California in 2019 during those October fires. So we all got evacuated, and after getting 180 exotic animals off our property, we went to our places to shelter and just chill out for 3 weeks while the fires raged. And I read this in a PDF form because I didn't have anything with me because we fled. But then I managed to get a copy, of course. So here he is, the grades of the Tree of Life according to the Argentum Astrum, Crowley's order, which is based on the Golden Dawn, but speciated from it, so they're not backwards compatible. And a lot of the interpretations are so radically different as to have no resemblance to the Golden Dawn whatsoever. It's a very different system, same but different. But the way Louv tells the story, it leads into this whole ultimate climax with an understanding and a review of Crowley's working through the Aethers. I loved the way Louv highlighted and synopsized Crowley's working through the Aethers, though he laments, of course, he can't just publish what Crowley said, despite it being in public domain, because of how litigious the OTO is trying to maintain copyright long after they have any right to. But I'll let that debate be fought by others who care more about it. So Louv gives his synopsis of Crowley's working through the Aethers, starting with Tex. Now, a lot of us would start with Lil and work toward Tex, but that's just a philosophical difference. And depending on whether you follow the sort of Hechelot approach of going high to low or low to high. And of course, in the Golden Dawn, we always start invoking from the highest. And so there's an argument to start with Lil and not Tex. And at the end, he shows how the Aeon of Horus and the Aeon of Choronzon all lead up to our modern culture. And he tries to do his best to show the fingers of this ancient tradition and the Western magical tradition weaving its way through Protestant and Catholic histories to produce, going all the way up to, he talks about the halftime game and Katy Perry riding out on a big red demon devil and looking at it apocalyptically, talking about Jack Parsons. And he imagines Thelema is correct, and imagine that meta narrative is actually the story of the world, and it's manifesting today as we see in the world all around us. What if that story is true? And there's a good argument for it, because in the final vision of fortitude that Crowley and Kelly had, that does seem very Thelemic in its presence, the way that image of the goddess, you could say, or as Thelemites would say, it's Babylon, appears to Dean Kelly. Now, of course, a D purist doesn't have that Thelemic understanding of it, unless they're a Thelemite and that's your religion, that's fine. But I wouldn't interpret it that way for myself, and I don't. And Dean Kelly certainly didn't interpret it in a Thelemic way, because they were 500 years ago, long before Thelema. But it's a very fascinating way to look at things, and that's what made the book such a fun read. And the fact that Jason Luth has such a wide-ranging scope of knowledge and is not afraid to dive into anything controversial or even speculate wildly about anything that his research inspires him to speculate about, that's really fun. And the Jack Parsons of it all is fascinating. Of course, there's great books about Jack Parsons that you can read, and the development of the first rockets, and NASA coming out of, Louvre traces a line from John Dee forming the British Empire with Queen Elizabeth all the way to the creation of NASA. So you can imagine how much fun this book is to read. It is a fucking delight. Pardon my French, but it is absolutely fantastic to read. I have tons of critical comments about it all throughout. I have many pages of notes on it, but that's not what we're here to do today. And plus, that's more fun to debate with Louvre every time I might get a chance to talk to him, and hopefully I'll get more chances over the years to debate these things with him and share our different points of view. We can hope. We can hope. John Dee and the Empire of Angels by Jason Louvre. It's a fun one, and you can still get it. It's a super affordable book, just a standard hardcover, not like one of these $300 books like the academic published books from Cambridge or Brill. Yeah, it's very affordable. You can grab it, and you should grab this. You should read it. And I don't know what else to say. Thanks for the support. If you can throw super chats, that's always appreciated to help pay for the streaming software, which is very expensive. And yeah, we'll do more of these when I have time. I'm in full preparation for the conference right now, and getting up super early every day to get this all working and going. And I would love to read you the court transcripts from Aleister Crowley and MacGregor Mathers, but I can't just do that for free. You guys got to throw me a few shekels for me to read the court transcripts with British accents, because I'm going to make an ass of myself. I know that. Just reading it is so silly. As a secret chief, 8 equals 3, Mathers, yes. Scorpio Casey, then thank you. Now with regard to Alan Bennett, he was staying with you in Paris? Mathers, yes. So Alan Bennett was in Paris with Mathers, right? He took drugs habitually? Yes, by the orders of the doctors. Never for pleasure? Never. How can you be sure? When he left England, the change of climate cured, at least temporarily, his disease. He instantly abandoned the practice. Yeah. So these are the actual court transcripts of these Rosicrucian scandal. And I would love to read them out loud to you sometime at the end of a live stream. And you just got to help me meet my goal for covering the software, and that's all it'll take. So we'll try that next time, maybe. Thanks for being here tonight. I hope you consider signing up to the conference and getting access to all the great, fabulous perks that being a member of the Arcane Research Society provides. And it's going to be fun. There's Yates, is my boy. It's my boy. Yeah. Sometimes I think he's handsome looking. Sometimes I think he's very odd looking. But of course, you could say that about anyone. Maybe. Who knows? Wild stuff. Crowley on film. There's more of you here watching now than before, but I'm out of steam. I don't want to destroy my voice when I still need it to do so many things. So thanks for watching. I'm going to finish my sangria and probably be asleep in bed in 2 hours and get up again at 5 a.m. to do more fun, sending off press releases to all the news agencies around town and in Canada to get stir up some noise about us. Thank you, Cage. Good to see you, brother. Cage Reality in the house. Does the craziest live streams you could ever imagine. Wild stuff. Go check out his YouTube. And yeah, thanks everyone for being here. It's been great. I've been really enjoying these live streams, and thanks to my students for allowing me the time to do a little less teaching and a little more promotion to get the numbers up for our conference, so we can add some frills and gimmicks to the event, and also just get the ball rolling more so that we can make Prague happen in 2027 and also have a good conference next year here in Vancouver. So here's the little ad to tell you about the conference. I hope you consider joining Enochian 2025. Thank you and have a wonderful evening.
Canada's only occult conference returns this July 11th to 13th. Enochian is an opportunity to come together with leading scholars of esotericism and practitioners of Western occultism in a friendly and open environment in Vancouver, Canada. This year in 2025, with presentations by an amazing group of presenters, including Dr. Justin Sledge, Dr. Terry Burns, Father Aaron Leach, Dr. Sasha Chato, Frater Eleftheria of Lifting the Lamp, Dr. David Litwa, Chris Trenholm, Daniel Rekshan, David Rankine, Ike Baker, and P.D. Newman. You can also attend live online and experience premier presentations of cutting-edge research and discoveries, and experience beautiful British Columbia. Register to become a member, and you also get included 2 upcoming winter workshops and access to Dr. Sasha Chato's phenomenal year-long undergraduate level course to introduce you to the academic study of Western esotericism. This is not even available at universities at the undergraduate level, but will be included now for everyone who registers to Enochian 2025 before July. Tarry not and sign up today. Go to enochiacon.com or arcaneresearchsociety.com for more information.
Subscribe, hit the notification bell, because I don't always plan these live streams in advance, and that way you might get notified, though hitting notification bell no longer promises that will happen. But yeah, I'm going to let you guys go, and thank you so much for being here. It was the most of any of the live streams right now, so that's really exciting. And yeah, if you ask more questions, I'll get more answers and stay on longer and stream longer, because I'll have something to talk about. But good 6 to 8 books is enough to cover in one session. So there you have it. Thank you very much. And sign up to Enochian today. It's worth it. Cheers.